Oh, did you all, or were you, either one of you interested in speaking at open forum? We just had open forum. Anybody who wants to speak to an agenda item? Okay. We've got to come to the consent agenda items. Is there anything we need to pull out and discuss separately, or can we vote on all of the items in the consent? And if so, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Move to approve.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Dr. Schindler, Chief of Learning update.
Okay, I have a few updates for you. First, you should know by now that you now have access to the JCPS metrics page. You know, we've been showing that for our updates, and you had asked for rights to see that. So Dawn has taken care of that for you. If you have any questions about that, just invite you to reach out, and we'll be more than happy to help you out. But hope that it's a document that you can use to kind of monitor data. I would point out that if you'll look as you're looking at it now, just to point out that as of end of December, we were down with our office referrals by 1,000 over last year at that time, and down 2,000 OSS days. So monitor that data, and that's what it's there for, and we'll have more conversations in the coming board meetings about that. Just want to point those two out because they're kind of substantial. Along that line, in terms of office referrals and behaviors, we are working on some behavior support structures for our staff. I know Dr. Lithcom has talked about the fact that during rounding we've heard from a lot of staff that behaviors are still an issue, and they are still an issue. We want to address those. However, we do believe that before we just start addressing and doing new things, we need to have a good handle on what are we currently doing, what do we have in place, and what are the expectations. So right now, working on a way to formalize our current practices through in written format, so everybody has access to that and they can see what does the district currently offer before we then put together a committee to help start looking at what do we need in addition to the current services. You know, are the services we have now, are they working or not working? And what do we need to do to get better? So just want you to know that we are working on that process. Also want you to know that last month when we talked about some of our data, we talked about one of the concerns we have is that we are showing growth in our local data, but when you look at our map results, we're not making the progress that we are with local data. And why is that? And one of the things I expressed at that time is that there's a big difference between the map assessment, the expectations on a map assessment, and what we do with our local assessments. And we believe that's an issue for our students, that we need to help provide them support for not teaching them the test, but are we providing them the test-taking strategies that they need in order to be successful on a very rigorous state assessment, because they have a lot of different expectations for the state assessment. We need to assure that our students have access to those strategies throughout the year, so when they get to that map test, they're not surprised by those expectations. So we've, our curriculum team has designed some test-taking strategy workshops for our staff that are interested. They can volunteer to attend, and we hope that we're going to encourage all of them to do that, because it is a way for us to show how are we embedding those strategies and expectations in our curriculum throughout the year so kids are ready when we get to the end of the year. And so just want you to know that's some professional development that we've organized and are excited about it. Going to be starting here in just a couple of weeks, and we're going to offer multiple opportunities for our staff to participate in those activities. Also, we'll say, I don't know if I've said this, but you know, you approve, usually in April, you approve a lot of curriculum. And I've said to you before that that's a 6-year process. We typically would review those every 6 years, our core curriculum. But you know that there are a lot of changes that have to happen during those 6 years. We can't just write something and put it on a shelf or use it for 6 years and not clean it up and monitor what the state requirements are and make changes. Just want you to know that as part of our process, after we write curriculum and after you approve it, within that curriculum is embedded a feedback form that our staff, after they begin to use it, they provide feedback to the curriculum department about the pacing and the standards and the way they're organized and the units and do I have enough time. So we have a process in place for our staff to provide us feedback for how the new curriculum is going, and we update and monitor that feedback regularly, monthly, and we make whenever possible, we make changes at the time, but more importantly, each quarter, each semester, and at the end of each year, we're able to make adjustments to our current curriculum to help support our staff and what they see as needs to improve for it to get better. So just want you to be aware that that process is in place.
Is that feedback voluntary or?
It's voluntary. We don't require it.
Do you know what kind of percentage of participation you get
It depends on the department and the content area. So we have some departments that give us a lot of feedback, and we have some departments that don't. And that could be the department, or it could also be that they're perfectly satisfied with the way the curriculum is organized. So there's really no way to tell until we get a little farther down the line. But it is a voluntary process, but we offer it to all staff members that use the curriculum to provide that.
All right, does anyone have any questions for Dr. Schindler? Thank you for your report.
Thank you, Brian.
All right. Jason Hoffman.
Good evening. I'll be brief. I have a couple of agenda items a little later that I'll talk more about, but just to give you a heads up on a couple things that are coming in the next meeting or so. I've mentioned before that Frank put together an RFQ, request for qualifications, for energy performance contracting. We know that we have needs at our existing buildings, and we're using as much of our yearly budget to keep our buildings up to date. But this is a way that we can possibly take advantage of future energy savings and issue debt now, pay off that debt with future energy savings. So we received those on December 20th. We got responses from 3 companies, so we're evaluating those and deciding if it's a good option to come forward, and if so, we'll be bringing something to you in the near future. And then the other thing, as you know, we have the board, I think it was in November, declared Simonson as surplus property. And normally with surplus property, once it's declared as surplus, we just dispose of it. This is not a normal situation. So we are working up solicitations to bid, and we're working through that and want to bring those to you for your approval. And so probably at the next meeting, we'll have that ready for discussion. That's all I have on this part.
We are going to have to probably have a special board meeting because the financials are not here. We couldn't, she just didn't have time to get with the year end, and they were out of school. So we may need to have a special board meeting, and we may discuss it at that time or in February. But
Right.
We will need to find a time, probably. I don't know if anybody's available 2 weeks from tonight, or if we want to try to do a morning meeting for a noon meeting. I know Stephanie's probably out, but does anybody have any suggestions?
The 27th?
January 27th?
I'm good with that.
The Jays play Elias.
Oh,
Lady Jays.
the
I'm
Lady
out of
Jays
town,
do.
But I could call in.
What time is the basketball games? At 7?
Maybe into the 6 o'clock.
Could we do like a 5:30 meeting?
Mhm.
I mean, I really don't think it'll be more than an hour, probably.
Agree.
5:30 on the 27th work for everybody?
I'll be available to call in.
Okay. Scott?
Works for me.
Okay, great. 5:30 on the
Okay.
27th, we'll have a special meeting to, nothing else, approve the financials, and if this is ready, we can talk about it as well.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you. All right, superintendent update. Dr. Linthicum.
First off, in the student theme of tonight, as we had a student difference maker, we have artwork from Jefferson City High School. So I wished I would have said something to Mr. James before they left, but the great artwork, we were talking earlier that when I was in high school art class, nothing came out quite like this. We have some extraordinary work, and so we'd just like to recognize that it's the level that our students on display. So just would like you to recognize that in our high school folks and thank them for what they're doing. Yesterday we had open houses at Jefferson City High School and Nichols Career Center and Capital City High School, both projects on time and under budget. I had a great turnout. I had an energy, a buzz at both buildings. It was truly excitement. We had great comments at Capital City, but we probably had more, maybe just because of there was anticipation at Capital City High School of maybe knowing what to expect because of a new school. The renovations at Jefferson City High School and Nichols Career Center, I think truly, we had so many comments that were just so positive and so encouraging that I think we shocked a lot of folks. And so it's just so exciting as at the end of the day, we want our students, regardless whether you go to school at Capital City or Jefferson City, that you have the same opportunities to reach your potential and to have hope for a better tomorrow. So we're super excited about that. The First semester, we had our rounding. It's basically rounding with Larry. We go to one school a week, and we're going to be starting that. Brenda, do we have one this Thursday? Starting next week. Okay, so we're starting next week. One thing we talked about in the fall with the rounding was that our teachers and their plates being full. And so we have a think tank of teachers we'll be starting this semester that we're finalizing, and that we're excited to ask our folks and our teachers of what are some things that we could start, stop doing, start doing, what do we need to keep doing, and just a simple framework, so we're excited about that. One thing that I'll touch on here a little bit later is our K through 8 overcrowding. We have as an agenda here is a 5 through 6 discussion that we'll have here in a little bit, so I'll get into more details there with that as a follow-up with that. So
Bless you.
that's all I have at this time.
All right, anybody have any questions for Larry on his report? All right, you have before you the future dates coming up. Martin Luther King, the gala, Coffee with Larry again, coming again in February, and our board meeting, President's Day, Coffee with Larry in March, board meeting, spring break. All right, old business, Naples, change order, Jason Hoffman.
Okay, so as we're nearing the end of the project, still some loose ends to finish up. We do have a change order to the guaranteed maximum price, and that was included in your packet. And so to give some explanations of the whole scheme of the budget for this project, the major part are the top two lines. We have a guaranteed maximum price, so the money spent at Jefferson City High School is just over $54 million, and Capital City is $69 million. So our contract with Nabholz is $123,527,787. And so after that, so that's the contract with Nabholz. We've kept a $1 million contingency that's been on our books. It's not on Nabholz's books, but as we're tracking our budget, we knew we had $1 million earmarked that we expected to put back into the project. Then there are a whole host of other things that go into the project. So design cost, architects, engineers, inspections, a whole host of different consultants helping us get the building designed and built. We had to do asbestos mitigation at Jefferson City High School. We outfitted both buildings with furniture, fixtures, and equipment, $7 million. The OSIP, so our owner-controlled insurance program, still budgeting for that at $2.3 million, and hopefully that's worst case scenario. So we're expecting the actual cost to come in under that, so to help the bottom line. We had to pay off-site utilities of $100,000, and we had to pay a permit fee to the Corps of Engineers to reroute a stream on Capital City High School property. So our total project budget was $143,631,000, and we had money, our pot of money to spend on the project was $145,722,542, and that's bond proceeds, projected interest income. We built the road, so included in the project cost is the cost of the road, and the city and the county are reimbursing us for that road. So we were expecting to have, after the end of the project, $2 million of money left over. So the way the project worked, we opened up bids, or we put out bid documents and we received bids. And since the bid documents were put out, the scope of the project has expanded. The original bid documents didn't have roof replacements, but while we were on the roof and we had extra monies, we've replaced the roof at Jefferson City High School Science Wing and Cafeteria. The original documents didn't have the window replacement on the east elevation of Nichols. They were a little bit newer, but they weren't new. But as we had extra money, we replaced those windows so that all windows in Nichols and JC were replaced. We were replacing drives and parking lots. The Nichols Career Center Service Drive and the Northwest Drive at Nichols and the lower parking lot at Nichols are all being redone. J Drive is being redone within our current scope, and then a partial repair at Atkins Stadium. As we got into the construction, and could be expected with a 60-year-old building, we had brick structural repairs. They weren't safety issues today, but they were things we were going to have to take care of at some point. So we included brick repairs at Nichols Career Center, the field house, and the south wall of the science wing, and we also waterproofed all the brick at both buildings. The turf fields, so not included originally, they were going to be grass fields, but we've included the turf field at Atkins and turfed Capital City football field, soccer, and the baseball infield. We were able to add lights at the soccer field and the baseball field at Capital City, and one of the big additions was to make the tennis courts at Capital City a competition facility that we didn't have for any of our athletes. So that was the addition of 4 additional tennis courts, lights, the viewing tower, which allows us to have concessions, bathroom, storage, and changing room, and then a tennis hitting wall. So we've added $9.9 million of scope to the project and still staying within the budget. And so we're able to do that because of the delivery method that we use. We chose to use construction management at risk. We're one of the first schools in the state to do this, but I'm a huge advocate for this and would advocate that we do this going forward. But to compare how it would work in a traditional general contractor, so we have one contract with Nabholz, and that's the same as a general contractor. And so Nabholz then has multiple subcontracts on each project. They have 61 at Capital City and 66 at Jeff City. So that's all very similar, but we got to be involved in the choosing of the subcontractors where we wouldn't really have that choice otherwise. And so when the bid openings happened, the bids came in under budget, so we knew early on that we had extra money, and so that's partially of how we added that scope. But the other thing is, in the guaranteed maximum price, Nabholz had to build in allowances because they're guaranteeing that price isn't going to go over. So one of the things that they used as an example was they had budgeted $300,000 for temporary heating for different types of projects. And so if you have to scaffold and tarp and heat, so they budgeted $300,000. Well, they only used $40,000 of that. So in a general contracting role, the general contractor would have kept that as profit. But in the CM at risk, that money just comes back to us. Nabholz, even though they budgeted for it, they only get that money if they spend it. So that is also how we were able to expand the scope. So you have the change order in front of you, and we are increasing the guaranteed maximum price from $123,500 to $125,215. So we're increasing it by $1,687,000. So we're covering $1 million of that by moving our contingency into the GMP, which we expected would happen all along. So none of the rest of the costs have changed. So we're truly just changing the total expenses up by $687,000. And instead of ending the project with $2,000,001, we now expect to end the project with $1,000,004. So by approving this tonight, I do need you to approve that, but we are still on time and under budget.
Anybody have questions for Jason?
Well, I don't know if now's the time to ask, but are we planning on an electronic marquee at Jeff City High School like we have at Capital City?
There is one. It is at the crosswalk at Union. It's in the scope.
So
It's
it's
just
on
not
Union?
it's not done yet. Right. It's on Union.
Okay.
We're talking about some other signage at Jefferson City High School. We wanted to get the signage up and see how it was, but I think it might be a little lacking. So I actually met with Architects Alliance on Friday, and they showed some things that we might be able to do. So we're still
Great.
working.
So signage is kind of part of the number.
And I think at the corner of Union and Lafayette, where there's the big grass hill, I think at one time there was a big sign there.
There was,
And so,
with the giant staircase that came up.
Yep.
right, so that's one of the ideas that Carrie Gamfer had, was that would be a nice place for a big
I
sign
don't
too.
think the wayfinding is very good for people on where the entrance is, and the little banner we have, that was something somebody said to me
True.
at the open house, was, are you going to be putting a permanent sign up that shows where the entrance is? Because I'm not sure that that's really evident when you're driving.
Completely agree, because I was out there the first day of when students were back, and it was evident. Right, Brenda?
Wonderful.
Well, it's my understanding also that
It was me, not her.
they did run conduit down that hill, correct? So there's already conduit so that we can get electric or whatever is needed to that
That is correct.
location for a sign.
That is correct.
What about the parking lot? So in the architect's, conceptual drawings, I thought that at one point there was discussion about leveling the parking lot there by the cafeteria. What's now the main entrance is like 3 levels. And wasn't one of the drawings showing that being
I
all
think we-
leveled to one level?
I think we had talked about that early on, but that didn't make it.
But that
into-
wasn't included in the plan?
Correct.
The final plan? then?
Correct.
Okay.
Would somebody like to make a motion to approve this change order?
Lorelei, I move to approve the change order as proposed.
Anybody want to second that?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Jason.
All right, Jason, you're back. to
Okay.
Talk about transportation. You and Frank.
So we talked about this last month. In December, we opened bids for transportation services. Just to give you a little history of our rates and what has happened. And so we did an extension in 2012-13. So that was a 3-year extension. And that first year, we got a 4% rate reduction, and then a 2% increase, and then a 2.5% increase. So you see that in fiscal year 15, and I just picked one of our rates, so the 72 passenger single rate is basically a wash with what we were paying in fiscal year 2012. Then we had a 5-year extension that ends at the end of this year, and so that's where you see the 3.5% increase that comes up here. So the first 3 years were 3.5% and then 3%. So the average of this is 2.1%, and I'm showing you this because I think that's part of the reason why we're seeing such a large increase now, because the costs of transportation have far exceeded that rate. So a lot of numbers here, but just this was put in your packet today, I believe. But this is the summary of the bids that we received. We received bids from 3 companies. Frank did a really good job putting together the RFP and trying to just get as many different options as we could. And so the option that we hoped to do was option A, which would reduce the age of our fleet, so get a newer bus fleet, and has more buses. But as you see, we got bids from Durham, Illinois Central, and First Student. And so Durham had a 61% increase on our current rate for that. Illinois Central was 36% and First Student was 29%. So then we had various alternates. One of the alternates that we were interested in is this bid B. That is, it's kind of a cross between district operated and contracted. And we got this idea because Union and who down Southwest, there are 2 districts that do this, Union, and there's a district down in Southwest Missouri, Nixa, it is Nixa. So we asked them to bid, what would it look like if you just supplied the drivers and trainers and we supplied everything else? And so the other 2, Durham and Illinois Central, didn't bid. First Student did give us a bid. So what we've been doing, like I mentioned, we couldn't afford the option that gave us the newer fleet, which was a 29% increase. That was the lowest from First Student. That would be more than $1 million a year of an increase. So what we've been looking at for the last month is we looked at 3 different things, really. It was the First Student bid alternate A that First Student did, and they basically said, take your current contract and add 19% to the rates. So that was our baseline that we were running against. Then we looked at their cross bid B, where First Student would supply the drivers and the trainers. We would look at doing the complete administration of transportation, which would mean buying buses, hiring management, securing the facility, all the mechanics, the supplies, the repairs to all the buses. So that was one of the options that we looked at, and the costs are very similar to the first option. And then we also looked at what it would look like if we just brought everything in-house, hired all the drivers, did everything ourselves. So like I said, the first 2 options were very similar in cost. As we look at operating it ourselves, We do think there is a possibility that we could save a little bit of money, and especially when we were looking at the original proposal from First Student, we thought we could have saved maybe $150,000 a year. But not sure that that was enough savings to offset, having to come up with a huge amount of capital outlay, not only up front, but having to buy buses year after year after year and having that big capital outlay. One of the biggest concerns that I have, we have our self-insured health insurance pool, and it's very stable. We haven't had increases in a long time. We're not hoping to have increases. And you bring in 80 to 90 new employees into that pool, I think that could be a negative that wouldn't really be reflected in the actual evaluation of transportation. We would lose the expertise of the contractor. So First Student has an arm called First Planning Solutions that we utilize them a lot when we're doing routing changes and as we've looked at bringing on buildings and different things. We would lose that. And then additional HR, payroll, work comp, those types of issues. So we've been negotiating with First Student. Can we do anything different than the 19%? So here is what the estimated cost would be based on the 19%, and then they've proposed 3% in each out year. So what we're looking at is a 3-year contract with 2 one-year extensions. What they have agreed to do is a 15% increase in the first year, which is $148,000 less, but then 4% increases at the final. And that's basically, as you see, that gets them basically to where they would be on the other one, but it takes them 5 years to get to the same spot. So we would see savings from their original position, but eventually getting to where they go. And so I put this in here, and I showed you early on that we've had low increases in the past. So even if you put in the 15 and 4 and 4 in 2023, you get to $291 for this rate. If you would have started back here in 2012 and just done a straight 3.6% every year, we get to the same spot. So it's hard to take all at once, but I think we've saved significant money throughout the years, and I don't know that we have a lot of other options. So the recommendation is that we take the 15% and 4 on the out years. Allows us to continue to work with local management on service improvements. One of the things we have asked, our current contract doesn't have any liquidated damages in it. So if we ask for a camera for a video of an incident and they come back and say we can't get that for you, we have no recourse. So we're going to work to negotiate. We put liquidated damages in the RFP of what we expect. So in our new agreement, we will have that if that video comes back and they don't have it, then we get to enforce penalties. So help us to have some recourse if things aren't going as they should. This will allow us to increase driver wages, which I think is very promising. We've done a good job of keeping drivers, but if there is a national shortage, so this will increase Brandon, is it the beginning wage to $17 an hour?
Beginning wage to 17 and then a step on all those.
So a pretty substantial increase to the drivers, so help to hire and retain drivers. And then again, this is a 3-year agreement with district options for year 4 and 5.
Jason, when you looked at the hybrid plan where we would take responsibility for management of the buses, you mentioned capital, you mentioned purchase. Is purchase the only option, or is there not a lease option?
There are. We looked at, so we obviously, if we were going to bring on a whole new fleet, we wouldn't go get all brand new buses. So we worked with a couple different bus vendors to give us what are the prices for current buses, but also get used buses so that we can kind of ladder the age of your fleet, so to say. And then so we looked at purchasing, we looked at lease purchase, we looked at lease, we looked at all the options.
Okay.
And spreading that out over 5 and the debt over 5 and 7 years.
and not significant differences in the overall cost of those, any of those different options.
Correct.
And we'd be responsible for all maintenance, right?
Right.
Repairs, maintenance, that gets so expensive.
And we factored that in. We had estimates on what we would be spending on each item for preventive maintenance, but also knowing we'll have repairs. And
Who, do we own, or does First Student own the current facility, the lot where, and garage and so forth where?
they actually lease that facility.
All
I
right,
think
but we don't own it.
we don't.
We don't have any.
We do own the
liability.
fuel tank that is there. So we own the fuel tank, get it filled, and we provide all the fuel. We buy tanker truckloads full of fuel, and that's all on us outside of this contract.
So now they own the buses and they're responsible for the maintenance.
Correct.
Today. So, you know, we have not been successful in the past, or I don't feel like, since my kids have been in school with First Student. You know, I got a call, I'm sure you guys did too, just within the last 10 days of a group of female athletes that it took 3 different buses to get them. They were stranded 3 different times on the side of the highway for maintenance issues. So I'm hesitant to save a little amount of money for the same service. You know, it seems like when we've had issues, even recently this year, when there's issues with busing, it's us going to them with the ideas of how they can improve their service. And that's a struggle for me to see that little amount of savings for the same not awesome service.
Agreed.
I guess the other question I have is when, you know, we see the increase, the percentage increase that they're bringing forward, what kind of documentation or what kind of support is there from them to support that they need the increase? I mean, you mentioned driver wages, so is that the majority of where this increase would go for, or is there other margin?
No, I
there to
think
be-
because of our rate being suppressed over the period, they've gotten to a spot where they've been losing money on our location. So there's no doubt that this increase will help solidify this as a profitable location for them.
Jason, are there, kind of follow up on Ken's question, are there any quality metrics that were built into the request for proposal or the requirements for performance when the contractors would come forward for those percentage increases in the future years?
No, the only thing that was built in would be the liquidated damages. So if they don't follow the route as specified, that would be a liquidated damage. And I can get you a list of what we wrote into the RFP as far as liquidated damages. There were a list of 12, 15 items. So videos is just one of them. Not notifying when the buses are late is a time for a liquidated damage.
And does that include all the extracurricular transportation and everything? So it includes every part of the service that they provide to us?
Right.
I mean, I personally would like to see that list of, as a protection for, you know, some recourse if we continue to have the service issues that, you know, we've heard about. To have some assurance that we're going to have a recourse, I think would be helpful in terms of evaluating, you know, whether this is the best way to go.
Right. So I can get you that
Yeah.
list, and we're not approving, we still have to get the agreement lined out, and you still have to approve the agreement. So this would just be approving the pricing structure.
So tonight, we would just be approving the pricing structure, and then we could later come back and not approve the agreement,
Potentially, right.
theoretically.
So we're not locked in.
So that
And
we
what
could-
is the time frame on, I mean, our current contract is through the end of the school year or through the end of
End of
August?
summer school.
End of
So-
summer school.
Right. So really, our only other option is for us to run it ourselves, and so,
I agree with you, though, there's a huge risk in that. I mean, you've run your numbers, but you can't know, I mean, the self-insured health is huge. I mean, you know, we do that at Cap Region, and there are years that it's just astronomical. And we are so stable in that right now. We've been able to bring down the health insurance costs for our employees and lower their, you know, what they're paying in by 8% several years ago. I hate to see that risk and the workers' comp. So,
And
I
I'm
just
assuming
think-
when you ran those numbers on us taking full control, you have additional administrative staff that we would have to add to oversee it in addition to the costs associated with just the drivers, correct?
So all of that was similar. So when we did the crossover option, you know, we had to have the administration. So figuring how much we need for administration, for mechanics, all of that was included in that we would have to add. Shelby and I had conversations about how many extra, what do we need to add for HR and payroll? Because you're having employees who don't work normal shifts and very time.
We'd have to add additional FTEs for the administrative piece, no doubt.
Right.
Not to mention it just taps our
Current administration.
current administration and takes you away from the other things that we're trying to work on. Do I hear a
So
motion?
Jason, I guess my additional concern would be, is I understand what you're saying about approving the cost structure this evening and then coming back and approving the agreement. If we approve the cost structure tonight, I assume that you probably already considered this from a negotiating perspective. I guess it just feels a little bit to me kind of like if we do that and then we send you back to the contractor to hammer out some specifics in terms of quality and in terms of, I think, you know, the comments tonight that we've heard about what folks are going to be looking for, you know, in future years for that, in order for them to justify a cost increase and the board to approve it. It just makes me feel a little bit like we're sending you in with one hand tied behind your back. Is that not the case, do you think?
Well, we've been in that position for a while when you look at where the other bids came in. So there's not a competitor in the contract world. So our only negotiating piece has been for us to bring it in-house. So that is still our only option. If we can't come to an agreement, we'll have to go that route, which that's been our only negotiating piece since we opened the bids that day.
Have we put on the table with First Student that those 4% steps through the years would have some, again, negotiation or some service delivery expectation rather than being just guaranteed? Has that been discussed with First Student to say, you know, we'll put these in as a part of the plan, but we also will have some metrics or we'll have some opportunity to judge their service level?
Only the liquidated damages.
That would be the only.
Yeah, we talked when we put the RFP out originally, we had asked for possibility of just a 1-year contract so that it could be annually renewable. And at the pre-bid meeting, they all said no one is going to bid because of the amount of capital that you have to bring in and dedicate.
Yeah.
I mean, it's $10 million probably.
And that's understandable. I just, I wondered if that had been considered.
That's why adding the liquidated damages was the only thing we could really do.
And have they agreed to that?
They've agreed to have liquidated damages. They haven't agreed to our full list yet.
For the term.
Mhm.
I'd like to see the list too.
But we can approve the cost structure tonight, and we can review the list, and we can always have the option to not approve the agreement, and then it's all over.
Correct.
It takes both pieces to go.
Exactly.
I will reluctantly
Yeah.
make a motion to approve the cost structure as presented this evening, but I would add a caveat to make sure that we get the list of liquidated damages as we've discussed, and I think there also needs to be some serious consideration or some discussions given to quality metrics that we need to visit with First Student about, because like Lindsay said earlier, this has and continues to be a pain point for a number of our families, and I have a significant amount of heartburn just going forward with not sharing with them that certain things need to change.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay.
Have a
Thank
nay.
you, Jason.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Thank you. All right, Dr. Lincoln, talk about the 5-6 building discussion.
Yes, last month, last 2 months, we've discussed options for consideration to address our K through 8 spacing needs and overcrowding. Just a little review, in 2014, there was a long-range facilities committee. They acknowledged there was K through 12 overcrowding. Recommendation from that of looking at considerations of a second high school, renovating JC High School and Nichols Career Center, of going forward. There was also parts of that of a new East Elementary School. And as they looked at those considerations, this is back in 2014. I came in 2015. There were plans of renovating East Elementary School, and it was renovated. We spent $3.5 million there in 2015, and then additionally some boundary lines were changed. Currently, East Elementary is our second smallest elementary school based on our enrollment, and so the need there is not as great as it was. We did address then in 2017 the grades 9 through 12 with the J+C, which we celebrated yesterday with the open house, as I touched on earlier during my report. We did share there in 2017, and we shared at one of our town hall meetings, that in 4 or 5 years we will need another bond issue to address the K through 8. So you could say we had K through 12 space needs, overcrowding, and we checked the box for the grades 9 through 12, but we still had K through 8. So we spent the last 10 months gathering stakeholder input, coming up with what is the best solution to address the overcrowding of our K through 8 buildings. The plan was presented with 2 5-6 buildings, I believe, at our last board meeting. It was a solid plan. We felt it was a viable solution to address the K through 8 overcrowding as a no tax rate bond issue. That would include, with a 5-6 building near Thomas Jefferson and one behind or near Lewis and Clark, would make all of our K through 5 elementary schools K through 4, so it would reduce the enrollment at each of those schools. And then both of our middle schools that have grades 6 through 8, by removing the 6th grade, then they would both be 7-8. So it would address the K through 8 with the 5-6 building. But with that, we believe, and we shared actually today, we sent out to our stakeholders, to our facilities focus group, our staff, our parents, and our community members, that we feel that there's more time is needed to evaluate possible solutions for addressing not only the K through 8 overcrowding, but also we have activities facility needs, we have renovations of existing buildings. Again, we do believe the 5-6 building plan is a solid plan, and it may ultimately be determined that that is the best plan. Again, we feel it's a solid plan, but at this time we want a great plan, and we want to be able to defend that. So we want to take time to ensure that our transition, to ensure our priorities for student success really does deserve our undivided attention, as we shared in our letter. Student achievement, literacy, student behaviors, our building climate and culture. Here's some changes that we've done here in the last year to 18 months. We've opened Capital City High School. We've changed start times. We've tweaked our boundary lines. We moved our middle school from having 4 cores of math, science, history, and English to math, science, history, and then reading and writing, with a focus on literacy. Changed to the 7-period day in our grades 6 through 12. Our buses, we changed the tier system of that. We have a behavior task force that we're beginning with here, as Dr. Schindorf touched on earlier, as we look at our reading scores, and we've made improvement each year on that, with our number 1 goal, ensuring that 100% of our kids are reading at or above grade level. That's that needs to be a laser-like focus. We believe with reading, if students can, once they learn to read, then that reading to learn element can really become a reality. A think tank of teachers that I touched on earlier. So slowing down the bond issue process, we believe will allow us to remain laser focused on our stop student priorities. And kind of moving forward here, our plans are this: continue to gather stakeholder input, assess our district's short and long-term facility needs. We have a current renovation schedule, but flesh that out through as part of a 5, 10, 15-year facilities plans. We got to hit the pause button to get our resources up to date on our elementary schools, specifically on the renovations that needed to occur, and those needs are still there, and we recognize that. The phase 2 of the athletic and activity fields, Jefferson City High School and Capital City High School, those needs are still there. To gather data on student populations, student achievement, student discipline in those schools that have 5 through 6, but also look at some other options of what that might be, so we can fully vet that while still focusing on our priorities to ensure that our students have the tools they need to be successful. And those things that I touched on, we're going to be having a junior class this year at Capital City High School that we've never had. There will be changes with that, just from the standpoint of having 2 grades at Capital City High School to 3 grades. You can plan for it, but making sure we do things with fidelity. At the end of the day, bottom line, do a better job of practicing what we claim to believe and what that looks like, and doing it with fidelity. So kind of slowing down, making sure that the things that we say we are doing, while we still continue to evaluate solutions to address our K through 8, that's what we want to do. So that's why we sent something out this morning. I wanted to communicate that with you guys and our patrons, that we know it's an important element, having the facilities to become a premier school district. We also recognize the processes of what we do every day, the difference makers that we have, the difference makers we have here, those were recognized earlier, an important part of that. And through our feedback, through rounding with Larry, we would meet with a building a week in the fall. We've got 2 scheduled next week. They, without saying slow down, they said slow down. Help us do what we need to do. Too many things are on our plates. If we move forward with having 5, 6 on the ballot, we'd have 100 town halls between now and then, and we'd go do what you got to do, right? But would some other things suffer because of that? Would you not, the think tank, would you not utilize that to gather staff feedback, really to help them be better in the classroom, so they're not fried every day? And that's something that we want to make that a priority, to take care of our folks, believing we're stronger together. So that's the reason where we are, and that's something that we will have we're working on a draft here for what would the next few months look like. What would the next 6, 9? Jason, we've discussed some considerations for when could we come back, because again, the needs are, in 2014, we have K through 12 overcrowding. This fall, we're gonna have trailers at 7 of our 13 K through 8 buildings. We are at or above capacity in 9 of those 13 buildings. And you can educate kids in a trailer, but it's not the ideal premier. We can use stairwells in our elementary schools, let's say, but it's not ideal. So I think folks recognize the need, but what are the different solutions that we come up with that? So the next 12 to 15 months, we've discussed the possibility of an August, a November, the following April of 21. We do anticipate coming back to our voters as a no tax rate increase, addressing our K through 8, and possibly additionally adding with the activities and athletic facilities still as a part of the no tax rate increase, along with the long range renovation schedule that, again, we have now. It's just not been formalized, but Frank has a schedule and of the things, of the needs, and formalize that process. So any questions you have for me now, or Jason, Frank, Brian, anybody else have any things we need to add to that, or any questions you have for me?
I mean, I know that a lot of people appreciate the tapping of the brakes and slowing things down. We have made a lot of changes. I do think it's important for us as a board to kind of stand firm in that we're in this for our kids, and we need to keep our community moving forward. And I think, Lorelei, I have voiced this to you before, I think that maybe over the course of the last 20 or so years, we haven't made the facilities progress that we needed to make, which is why we're in this situation now. And you just said we were talking about the same issues in 2013 and 2014. It's 2020 and we don't have a plan that our community will get behind yet. And I don't think that that's our fault at all. But I just think that we need to keep, if we formalize that, what that long-range plan looks like, I think we need to put it on our website and keep it out there and keep it updated so that nobody can say, we didn't know what you were doing or we didn't know what your plan was. We talk about it all the time and we know what the long-range plan is, but let's just get firm and get behind it and put it out there and move forward and not, I just hate to see us slam on the brakes because we've got to keep moving.
And we will, if I could interject there, have as a part of that plan that will include opportunities for community feedback, our stakeholder input, that will include different parts to address the different needs and a timeline with that we have I have pasted on the wall in my office of there was a 18-month process with Capital City High School and Jeff City High School, and every month at Coffee with Larry we touched on that. Carrie Gamford from Architects Alliance, some folks from Nabholz were there and would give us an update along the way every month. And if we do that here at our board meetings, here's where we are. And again, the 5-6 may be the best option, but we recognize everybody in here went to a high school probably, unless you dropped out. And thanks for stepping in our schools if you did drop out. But our goal is that all our kids go to school. Most folks haven't been in a 5-6 building. And so just the not being familiar with, well, what is that? What is that? We need to do a better job of educating folks if that is the best solution. And I do think it's a solid solution, but we want to make sure and have some that I think we could have vetted it out better with many things going on, and I'll take responsibility for that. So we want to be proactive with this.
I would like to, I think I'd echo what Lindsay's saying. I think, the reason that we're here is because some of our predecessors maybe, and I'm not, I have respect for them and the tough decisions they've had, but the reality is that in the past we've taken too long to make some of the decisions that we needed to make, and they're not easy decisions, they're not popular, but we haven't done that as effectively as we should have. So I think we need to help hold each other accountable in terms of moving the things forward. The other things I would like for us, again, to very quickly do some additional research in the Midwest with other districts that are like size to us. The reports that we got, again, were from districts in Missouri, and granted, there are a limited number of those districts in the state of Missouri that are our size and where the 5-6 building is even, a practicality. But there've got to be other districts in the Midwest that we could reach out to and get some additional information about that. And then the other thing is that I'm going to encourage us to also move forward fairly quickly on looking at the policy that we adopted, which said that we would look at boundary lines district-wide, and that we don't have to wait on that. We don't have to wait till there's a building proposal. We can move forward with that. And so I'm going to, again, encourage us as a board to move on that in the next few months to formalize a process of looking at K through 12 boundary lines district-wide.
Are you talking about getting talking with the demographer and see what it looks like to just,
I think whatever
this is
that,
what it looks like, what do we need to do?
Yes.
Redistrict all across the board.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
I'm saying, not
Okay.
wait until we have a formal building proposal or a bond issue for a building. I don't think we have to wait for that. I think that I think it would help us make a more informed decision about what, again, I agree that from everything I saw, the 5-6 appeared to meet most of the needs, but I think, again, the redistricting that might need to be done and could be done wouldn't have to be tied to a building proposal.
I would completely agree with Ken. I know that will not be the popular solution of the masses, but at this point, I'm not sure that we have a lot of other options.
Well, as the community changes, but if we have a policy that says you have to look at the boundary lines every 3 years, can there not be a similar type policy that forces you have to evaluate your facility every 3 years? It needs to be a working plan. Like, we have this visionary 25-year plan, but we can't just set that on the shelf what was it, 25 years between LC and Capital City and only one elementary in between. We can't let that happen again.
Yeah.
And I know that all of us are very much, we feel this way, but we also feel like for the next step, we've got to have a solid plan, because a lot of questions came to us that we did not have solid answers for. And I know there's answers, we just need time to go get those answers. And that's why I thank you, because I just think we've got to get our ducks in a row, not only about the 5-6 building, but also what is our plan for that added space in elementary? Do we have a solid pre-K plan that we want to go with? Are we going to beef up behavioral health? How will we pay for those services? So I just think there's a lot of questions that we need to answer. Clearly, we need space when we have so many trailers. I just think we owe it to our stakeholders and our community to have answers.
And I believe along with that, just on our reports that we have on a monthly basis, next month have that as an agenda element of looking at our facilities and those questions that you have and that you think of, to where it can be a consistent part of throughout the process going forward. So we'll do that and have something for you here a month from now that we'll continue to vet. We're discussing it tomorrow with our administrators at our AC meeting, and what would have to happen over the next months of all those elements. And you guys poke holes in it, and we'll continue to vet that going forward.
I just want to say I
Larry?
agree. Go ahead, Steve.
Larry, I give
Yes.
you and the district a lot of credit, and there's a lot of work still to be done ahead of you, and you know that. But from a leadership perspective, and I think everyone knows this sitting at the table, but I think it's important that it be said, because I think we need to recognize that it takes a lot of courage and a lot of reflection and dedication to purpose to go through a multi-month project like we have and impanel a committee and have meetings and go through a lot of work and get to, right up before we vote to go or no go, and to kind of step back a little bit and say, you know what, I think we're not quite where we need to be yet, and I think we need just to take a little bit more time to do this right. There's any number of projects throughout the years, especially in public service, that probably should have benefited from a little extra time and a little extra TLC, but there was so much inertia behind the programs and getting it done that just people didn't want to do that. And so I really give you a lot of credit for that, because it speaks to the leadership that you brought to the district, and I'm very pleased to see that you made this decision.
Thank you, but it wasn't just a Larry, it's a team decision, and but thank you for sharing that
Sure.
there was a team effort.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Appreciate that from everybody.
All right. Any further discussion? Hear somebody make a motion for close, please.
So moved.
No, you got to read it.
Oh, that's Lindsay. Lindsay.
Not that easy. You got to read this one.
It's all you.
Nice try.
Motion
Nice
to
try.
suspend open to enter into the closed meeting by roll call vote pursuant to Chapter 610.021 of the revised statutes of Missouri, Sections 1, legal actions, causes of action, or litigation involving a public governmental body. 3, hiring, firing, disciplining, of promoting our particular employees. 13, individually identifiable personnel records. And 14, records which are protected by disclosure by law.
I'll take a second.
Oh, second.
Roll call vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
We will take a 5-minute break, and we will come back here close.